This is session number 40 of the Silver Track Extra.
Thanks for tuning in to the Silver Track Extra, your source for the best tips, tricks, and how-tos to dominate the security industry, helping you improve your business, win more contracts, and crush your competition. Here are your hosts, Chris Anderson and Johnny Page.
What's up, Silver Track Nation? Johnny Page here, along with Chris Anderson. We're going at it in another episode here on how to conduct a post-inspection. We're going to talk about what's the reality of post-inspections, what are their role within a security operation, and then how do we make sure that we're conducting really quality post-inspections so that our time is productive and that we get the most out of our time on site. Chris, so where does this all start, Chris? Why do we do post-inspections and why are they important?
Well, we do post-inspections so we can make sure that everything is meeting the client's expectations, right? The officers are performing, they're doing what they need to do, and they have everything they need to do the job.
Yeah, this really goes back to retention, right? We're making sure that we're doing everything we can to retain this contract.
And I'm sure you've heard you get what you expect when you inspect, right?
Yeah, I mean, so when we're going on site, our expectations need to match up with what we're inspecting. We're going to talk about how we do that. But let's turn to how are these being done in reality right now? What do we see pretty often, Chris, of how these are being handled, the post-inspections, how they're being sold or communicated to the client?
Well, the reality of the post-inspections, most security supervisors in the past, come in unannounced. So a lot of people think that the post-inspections are really just to make sure that the guard's not sleeping on the job, which is not true. It's really about, like we talked about, improving services.
Yeah, and this goes back to that same conversation we had about geofencing versus breadcrumb tracking, right? Are you just trying to prove that the guard is there? Because if that's all you're trying to do, that's a minimum requirement in the eyes of the customer. Or are you doing something to make sure that your customer gets the maximum amount of value, right? It needs to be, the post-inspections need to be done with that in mind. So when you're going on site, it's not just, hey, is my guard sleeping? Or is he in jean shorts and a tank top? Or then we're shifting our mindset to saying, is my guard doing everything they can to deliver the maximum amount of value within the scope of service here for my customer, right? So that starts, Chris, when we talk about going on site and conducting a quality post inspection, this really comes down to inspecting and collecting information based on the key performance indicators for that property. These key performance indicators are how we judge our performance. How are we going to measure the job that we're doing? And this really falls into two categories, right? So we've got the internal standards, everything that you want your officers to live up with, that in regards to your management processes, the standards that you have internally, you yourself as a company. This is completely outside of the standards that your customer has, right? So we've got two categories, your internal standards and then your customer standards. So Chris, what are some of the things that we can do to make sure that we're establishing the right internal standards so that when we go on site, we know exactly what we're looking for?
Well, when I go on after the initial questions of how are you and how are you doing, how you feeling, right? I like to go into checking out to make sure how the schedule's working out for them, right? How's the schedule working for you at the post? And then how do you like your shift hours? That's just a couple things to start.
Right, because you're looking to make sure they're still a good fit for this site, right?
Yeah, I want to make sure that they're comfortable and they like their job, what they're doing.
Okay. Also, asking things like, are you comfortable with your coworkers, all that good stuff?
Yeah, team members, especially at a 24-hour shift, you're going to find out a lot of guys aren't getting relieved on time, right? Or they're getting relieved late. And, nobody's putting the effort in to make sure that they get home on time, or they're not passing the required post-order information, keys, and equipment, and so on. So they could do a good job when they're there. All those things apply.
Great. So you're really inspecting all of the systems and processes that should be in place, right? Like how are pass down orders being handled? How is communication of certain incidents being passed on? Who's your point of contact in these items, right? Because you're just making sure that this individual is still a really good fit for this spot and everything is being maintained, nothing's being taken for granted, or nothing has digressed since you launched on this property, right?
Yeah, I want to make sure that, again, everybody is communicating together. Everybody's passing the information together. The equipment, the keys, the golf cart, all the stuff isn't going home with the other guard that just left the shift, right? Because these are things that are going to affect the account. So yes, is everybody taking their lunch breaks on time? Is everybody taking their breaks on time? All those are going to apply. It's going to tell you a lot about what's going on.
So also things we may be inspecting when it comes to the internal standards, probably uniform requirements, right, Chris, or hygiene requirements, making sure they have their guard card, whatever those type of requirements are. These are all things that, although it's probably, if it's going wrong, it's important to your customer, it's not the reason why they hired you, right? It doesn't directly impact their desired outcome. Now, when we talk about shifting to what are your customer standards, these are the ones that are really, really important in terms of retention, right? So we want to do things potentially in establishing what those key performance indicators are. This starts when you're writing the post orders, Chris, but what I like to do is say, if I like to ask the customer, how can I know that we're doing a good job? On a month-to-month basis, how can we as a company know that we're doing a good job? And they'll tell you, right out of the gate, they'll tell you exactly what goes into that. And it may evolve over time, but that really kicks off what those key performance indicators are. So then you can, when they set that list out for you, you'll know what to measure against to make sure that you're still delivering that desired outcome. One of the things that we can do is consider walking the job with the officer, right, Chris?
Yeah, definitely. And then going back what you just talked about, I like to ask the client, is everything going okay? Do you like what we're doing? Is there anything we can do to improve on? And would you like to add anything based on some of the research and the work that we're providing you now as far as the documentation? And then, again, going out to the job and walking with that officer in the field, see everything in real time.
What are some of the benefits of actually walking around with the officer rather than like staying in the guard shack or kind of just hanging around the patrol car?
Yeah, well, think about it. You have two bodies now walking the property or the facility. It's visibility, right? It's really a proactive approach. People get to see you. On top of that, you get to see how the officer is doing, his surroundings. Is he aware, where the exit signs are, where the stairways are, and then how he's doing and how he communicates with the public or the resident attendants at the location. So a lot of advantages to that versus just sitting at the shack and asking them questions.
Great point, Chris. And that really has a lot to do with the expectations of the customer, which goes back to the post orders. When we establish those post orders, we're basically writing out a document that says, this is what we're expected to do on site and this is what we'll deliver. So when you're doing the post inspection, you're making sure that what's actually going on site still matches what was requested in the post orders, right? Because as time goes by, Chris, we can get a little bit lax in that. We know the officers are doing the job. They may tweak what they're doing based on the customer's requests, but it's important to make sure that the post orders or the scope of service is still matching what is actually happening on site. And the post inspections are a great time to be checking on that, right?
Yeah, and everybody will agree out here, listeners, when your supervisors are out there doing post inspections, make sure he has some documentation. Make sure he's actually writing things down, because if he's not writing things down or taking notes and asking the guard questions, how can you expect your employees to do the same, your security personnel? So you got to lead by example. So he should be taking notes, putting things down, asking the guard questions, and then if there's any follow-up, he should be asking obviously the security officer in post, hey, do me a favor, let me know how it's going. When I return next week, can you tell me how the tours are now going in the other stairways that we talked about? So those are the things to kind of get him engaged too.
Well, SilverTrack Nation, we're going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsors over at Paperless Proposal. But when we get back, we're going to talk about the preparation that goes into the post inspections to really make sure that we're getting the most out of our time on site. You're not going to want to miss it. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with our featured conversation.
Does your security business need to create business proposals to win clients? Are you frustrated by how much time and resources it takes to create and manage your proposals? If yes, I want to introduce you to Paperless Proposal Software. With Paperless Proposal Software, you can easily create impressive business proposals in minutes, and Paperless Proposal Software allows you to quickly and easily track and manage all of your proposals. Get a free demo at www.paperlessproposal.com/SilverTrack.
Let's talk about how we can best prepare for these post inspections, because it's not just showing up on site, Chris, right? If we're really going to get the most out of our time on the property, we need to probably be preparing our routes ahead of time. Which properties are we going to hit today? Probably need to have some sort of calendar to make sure that we're hitting all of our sites regularly, that we're not favoring some over others. Of course, some may be more demanding, but we want to be intentional about it, not just because two were closer to each other than one that was a little bit farther off.
Yeah, and the guys that are preparing their routes, the part of the problem too, John, is we both know that they're doing two jobs half the time, right? They're patrolling and then they're supervising. So sometimes they get stuck in their patrols and they can't supervise it. So if you're able to actually supervise your accounts, then you should, without a doubt, be able to prepare your routes ahead of time, know where you go, where you're going to go, who you're going to visit, and make sure you don't duplicate those efforts.
Yeah, and then when we're doing that, obviously we need to make sure that we're leaving time for the emergencies, the critical issues that pop up that we need to respond. But we need to be intentional about hitting all of these sites, because this really will go a long ways to the retaining these contracts, right?
Yep, not only retaining the contracts, but the employees too. And you don't want to appear to be rushed when you go there, because if you're rushed, you're going to do a poor job documenting and gathering information you need. So it just turns out to be a poor visit. So why go there, right? So.
Yeah. One thing that I think is really beneficial while conducting these post inspections is to bring some of the past reports that were written by the officer, especially when report writing is an issue with that officer, and go over the report with them on site, right? Talk to the officer. What happened here? You're pretty vague in this area, or you said no issues to report. Tell me about what you were doing when you were at this spot, or what happened here, and then talk to them about how to correctly report this item. This is a great way to address issues individually with the officer, but like we said, the reports are your representation of your services to your customer. So a really awesome way to go through how to correct some of those issues with the officer on site while you're doing the post inspections.
And John, those are SilverTrack clients already. Let me bring up on your report. The good thing to look at is the photographs. All right. A lot of the times you'll see a guard make a selection, tour property, for an example. Well, I hate that issue. I like to break down exactly what you're doing when you're at that location. But take a look at the photographs of what your officers are taking, and listen to and look at the written content. A lot of times that'll be an issue that you can recreate, or what he's really doing, if you look at the picture, he's reporting a location that should be monitored. Maybe it's something brand new that came up that never got passed. So just something to think about.
Yeah, great point. We also want to make sure, last point here, is that when we're doing the post inspections, that we've got an adequate amount of time and we're being thorough, right? It really is better off not being done at all if you're just going to go on site and rush through it and kind of go through this haphazardly. If you're going to do a post inspection, get the most out of your time on site. Make sure that you're prepared ahead of time, that you're reviewing your internal standards, what you want the officer to be, or the standards you want them upholding as the requirements of your company, and then also the customer standards. What is required by your customer? What do they need to see to consider you guys having done a good job? Coupling these things together and doing a quality post inspection will really go a long ways to retaining your customers.
In addition, if you're there and you know that your time is going to be short and you're going to be rushed, advise the officer that's there, your team member, that, listen, I'm sorry, this is going to be a rush visit. I've got some things to do. So keep him informed what's going on, so he doesn't think you just came there real quick and you're flaking and you're driving off. Let him know what's going on with you and say, hey, I only got a few minutes, so if I can get your attention, we can go through this quickly. I'd appreciate it. And he'll appreciate that.
Absolutely. Well, guys, if you want a more detailed article, we've always got great links to related podcasts and just some amazing resources available for all of the podcasts that we do here. So visit silvertracksoftware.com/40. That's 40 for this episode number 40 on how to conduct the post inspection. You can take this outline, use it internally within your company. Hopefully you have some information here that helps you improve the way you are currently operating your post inspections. And until next time, my name is Johnny Page.
I'm Chris Anderson.
This was a SilverTrack Extra, and we'll talk to you soon.
This has been another episode of the SilverTrack Extra. For more insider information, visit silvertracksoftware.com/extra. Listen on the go by subscribing in iTunes. Want to hear your questions answered on the show? Visit silvertracksoftware.com/questions to submit your requests.